Welcome back, Wanderers. I am Wild Tom, and in this third and final part of Wonder About Nature Catch-Ups, I wanted to see what was wondering about when I wasn't. And with these motion-activated cameras here, I was able to do just that. These are going to enable me to get a view of wildlife that I could previously only ever observe from a distance. And what better place to start using them than where we are right now, my own back garden. I had previously caught glimpses of movement here after dark, so naturally I was really eager to see what was wandering in when I was tucked up in bed. And I was not disappointed. Let's take a look.
Now I kid you not, this first clip was from the very first night that I put the camera out. And I mean right there, that really is an icon of the British garden, isn't it? This is a creature that for most of you needs no introduction whatsoever. For those of you that would like one, I give you the European hedgehog. And over that summer I was absolutely thrilled to find that these were regular visits. And from the footage I could see that there were at least 3 different individuals visiting, but by far most or nearly all of these visits were by a hedgehog which only had one good eye, or at least only appeared to have one good eye. So due to this unique appearance, it was given the nickname Harold. I did later realise that Harold was a she, commonly known in the hedgehog world as a sow, but by that time the name had already stuck. And let me tell you, she has given us some truly remarkable footage over that time. That poorly eye has not affected her appetite either, because if given the time and privacy, she would gladly snaffle up anything that was put out, like this night when she was able to completely clear the plate. But clearly, even after all that food that was put out, that was not enough, as proven here when she was caught yanking an earthworm out of the ground and devouring it like a piece of slimy spaghetti. They really are noisy eaters, aren't they? But for me, it is these bad table manners that encompass part of their charm. There is something really cute about a small animal eating so loudly. Now, until I moved to this house, I hadn't actually seen a hedgehog since I was a child. So having one as a regular visitor here has been absolutely brilliant. So to encourage her to keep doing so, I did set up a hedgehog house, which she never really set up resident in, disappointingly, but did explore it with great interest on many nights, as you can see here. Now, for the most part, those hedgehogs were the only nighttime visitors that I managed to capture on film. That was until this little beauty wandered in front of the camera. This is, of course, a red fox, and by the looks of it, no younger than 4 or 5 months old, as this is the age when they start to venture from their parents much more frequently. A little fun fact here for you, despite their appearance, foxes aren't dogs in the strictest sense of the word. They come from a group of animals known as cat-like canines. One of the defining traits of these being that they can actually retract their claws inwards, like a cat, which is something true canine species cannot do with theirs. To date, this has been the only time the camera has captured a fox on film. I do hope it's not the last. And as night slowly makes the transition into day, it wasn't just the nocturnal visitors who ended up making an appearance for us. As I barely stir from my sleep, a fair few of the local birds are already up and about, ready to pick off any remaining scraps from the night before. One of which was a very wet-looking carrion crow, or as I like to call them, the vulture of the British countryside. This is due to the fact that they appear to be among the first creatures at a carcass. And I'd like to think that it's very likely that these habits have earned them this namesake. You may have also noticed that bulge under its chin. This is what's called a crop. It essentially works in the same way as a hamster's cheek pouches, in that it's used to store food for later consumption. But despite their name, like other members of the crow family, otherwise known as corvids, carrion crows are omnivores, so as well as meat, pretty much anything else, seasons permitting, is on the menu, which leads me neatly on to this next visitor. a little Eurasian magpie, a bird with an oddly negative reputation, mainly due to their, shall we say, uniquely challenging attitude, and of course those many superstitions that surround them. Personally, I can't get enough of them, for two reasons really: that beautiful coloration, and I find their high intelligence makes them especially entertaining to watch. But aside from those gluttonous corvids, I have captured appearances from the other usual suspects. I have of course been inundated with flocks of starlings, being accompanied sometimes by recently fledged young here. A group of these will almost certainly ensure that nothing else is left. They've also got an astounding skill to mimic other birds. So I have personally witnessed starlings mimicking many birds like buzzards, jackdaws, gulls, among many others, and not even excluding inanimate objects like car alarms. In some instances, hand-reared ones have even learnt to mimic human language. They'll always travel in these large flocks, as I'm sure you've seen them do above marshes and piers just before sunset during autumn and winter months. This is probably why they are seen squabbling with each other so much. Speaking of squabbling groups of birds, we've also frequently had these cute little house sparrows visit. Not as much as a common sight as I remember, sadly, so always a treat to see them busily hopping about. Now, as you can see, most of these birds don't really seem too fazed by that wet weather, so they happily come out in it most of the time. But others, like this male blackbird, appear to revel in it, as the damp conditions will bring out invertebrates like slugs and worms, which are amongst their favourite foods. Ha! Look at these two chunky old wood pigeons, quite possibly the most commonly seen bird in the whole of the UK. And I'm pretty sure these birds have more than one stomach. They just seem to eat so much. Some visitors, however, are not so welcome. I guess it serves me right for putting out cat food, doesn't it?
Well, how about that then? The amount of life that such a small area can bring is really quite incredible, isn't it? Particularly in the case of our spiky little friend there. Until I moved to this area just over a year ago, it had been so many years since I'd last seen a hedgehog. And this isn't necessarily a good thing, as their numbers are still in trouble due to habitat loss. There are only, unfortunately, around 1 million left in the UK, so gardens like this are utterly crucial to them. There is definitely a lot more awareness to this these days, and with the help of great organisations such as the British Hedgehog Preservation Society, urban populations are increasing due to their fantastic efforts. It is certainly a step in the right direction, but with rural populations continuing to be in decline, there is still so much more work to be done. Do click the link below to find out more. Well, with the success of the footage from my garden, I couldn't wait to get these things out in the wild. My initial thought was to place them out in a nearby nature reserve. To increase my chances of getting that footage, I did a couple of things. First of all, the locations which I chose within the nature reserve were all nearby or on suspected wildlife trails. These are basically anywhere where I found furrows through grass or hedgerows, and so forth. Secondly, was to leave some bait, which basically consisted of nuts, seeds, and cat food. Results were mixed, but ultimately satisfying. Here's what happened.
When I first brought my camera home after leaving it in the nature reserve for a night, I was initially quite excited to find footage of these little field mice running around in front of it. But after leaving it in multiple locations for over a week, it appeared that these little fellows were pretty much the only critters to be making an appearance this time. This is why most camera traps are left out for weeks, maybe even months at a time, so a true variety of what is out there can be shown. Needless to say, some of the mouse footage is still a joy to watch. It wasn't all mice, mind you. These rabbits were captured making their way along a trail one night. These are technically an introduced species, but as they have been residents here for such a long time, most people will now accept them as a native species. And they are, of course, prey animals for many of our native predators now, like this red fox that got spooked by the camera before making back off again. So it turns out, when it's switched on, this camera is also pretty good at capturing anything making a noise nearby, which leads us to this clip, which you may remember from the start of the episode. In the background, a sort of screeching sound can be heard, which I asked you to identify, and I can now reveal that the individual making that noise was a female tawny owl. I know it's a female for sure because it's only females that make that noise in order to attract males. The male will then make the hooting sound in response, and it's that noise that most of us are more familiar with. And once again, as the dawn draws in, the early risers emerge to pick through the leftovers. On this particular morning, it was this robin that arrived first on the scene. Now, I'm sure when you've seen these little guys, you will very rarely see more than one or two at a time. This is mainly because robins are fiercely territorial, and that famous red breast has a lot to do with signalling this fact. It's generally used as a warning display to any other robins that might dare to intrude. It works kind of like this. The older and better at survival a robin gets, the brighter that red breast gets. And the brighter it is, the more intimidating the robin will be, and therefore be better at defending a territory. A successfully mated pair can hold down a territory the size of a small car park. Now there is an animal way more dedicated to social isolation than you will ever be. That same morning, I was even lucky enough to get footage of this scruffy looking great tit. That appearance is likely due to a molt, but could have been caused by mites or could just be a juvenile still growing in its adult feathers. So just like the mice, we do appear to have an animal that continues to be no stranger to our cameras. It's another carrion crow, but does appear to be much larger than that male in my garden, so it's most likely to be a female this time. It's when they get to these sizes that you can understand why so many people easily mistake these birds for ravens. And we even got a little serenade for our camera this time. Now, just before we take our leave of the nature reserve for now, here's the third rodent there to have been captured on our camera. Our own American invader, the grey squirrel. These were introduced into the UK roughly 150 years ago, famously all but wiping out our native red squirrel through transmission of disease. Stigmas aside, with how common and used to humans they are, they still do provide quite a thrilling wildlife encounter nonetheless.
Well, that is all I managed to capture in that location for now, but that particular nature reserve covers just over 80 acres, so you can bet it has a few more secrets to give up yet, so do watch this space on that front. Now finally, earlier this year, I took my newest toy with me on a trip to the glorious Loch Lomond in Scotland. It was still early March, so nature was still stirring at the time. That being said, I still spotted plenty of wildlife, some of which did happen past the camera.
So, I originally set my camera at this location on the loch shoreline because I'd found otter prints really close by. So you can imagine my mild frustration at spooling through all of the footage only to find that our eagle-eyed opportunist friend, the carrion crow, had once again insisted on a starring role. It had made several return trips that morning, seemingly just to ensure that not a scrap was left for anybody else. Now I know this isn't footage from the camera trap, but when I saw this raven, I knew the footage just had to be included. Many people do mistake carrion crow for these guys, which is understandable as they are both quite large birds, But when you see a raven, you know you've seen a raven. That bulky size and thick beak really do give them away. And that wingspan is very large for a corvid, which can grow to just over 1.5 meters across. What a treat this was. Now, as much as they frequently insist on appearing for my camera, I still find these humble mice endearing enough to include. Naturally, I did save the best for last. On my first night there, I was absolutely delighted to capture this female roe deer wandering along the shoreline. There isn't much footage, but sometimes big rewards do come in small portions.
Those mice get everywhere, don't they? It's like they're following me around the country. Certainly very entertaining though. I was so happy to get that gorgeous roe deer on camera too. Maybe I'll go there when the warmer seasons have set in more. I can only imagine what the footage would be like then. Well, I hope you've enjoyed catching up with me. There will be more camera trap footage coming up in future episodes, so do keep your eyes peeled. The next video will be a brand new episode of Wonder About Nature, where I'll be taking a look around this nearby nature reserve where I put those cameras. I will see you there. This is Wild Tom signing off. See you later.